like watching a nation busily engaged in heaping up its own funeral pyre.
In this country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. How dare I stir up trouble and inflame feelings by repeating such a conversation? My answer is that I do not have the right not to do so.
We are on the verge of a very hot race war in this country, and Enoch Powell is going to be proven right very, very soon. The only thing keeping Britain from exploding in a mass of racial violence and problems was the fact that the economy was really pretty good, but that once it turned down, then there would be a great deal of trouble. But the whole place is, to use another simile, a huge powder keg, just waiting for the match or the spark to set it off. And that's where we are today. When you now have someone like George Soros, the man who nearly broke the Bank of England, saying that we're at the end of a 60-year period of stability and growth and comfort and ease, and from now on the economy around us is going to be something radically, drastically different and poorer and worse. Within 3 years, this combination of economic catastrophe and the racial problems, the ethnic problems, the religious problems, everything connected with Islam and the fact it doesn't fit in our society. Within 3 years, those things coming together will create an explosion of communal, racist and religious violence in this country between various different groups, which will end in its first stage with what in Northern Ireland are euphemistically called peace walls, by what we're going to see within the next 3 years, neighbours burning out neighbours, whole streets on fire. In fact, when you look at a map of Britain, I don't think you'll see it from a satellite because there's too many ordinary lights on. But were you to turn all the ordinary lights off, or if you were to pinpoint where this is happening, we are going to see this from Scotland down to Crawley, from Hull across through Preston to Liverpool. There's going to be a cross of fire of burning communities slapped right across the map of the British Isles.
So when the political class say that no one saw this coming, when the media claim that we had no warning of this, it simply isn't true. Yet again they're lying to us. Enoch Powell warned them, and the political elite and the media liberals destroyed his career for doing so. The British National Party warned them, and the corrupt political elite and their lying friends in the media have persecuted us for speaking out. I warned them, and they've tried to put me in prison 3 times for saying what even the prosecution in those cases admitted was all true. They even tried to jail me for warning, months before it happened, that Muslim suicide bombers would blow up buses and tube trains in central London. So people like me have warned the political elite, time and time again, that their great multicultural experiment was doomed to failure. And the Tories, Liberals and Labour alike all said we were wrong and tried to demonise us. But who was right all along? That said, I'm not here to say, told you so. The situation is too serious to use it for party political point scoring. Because while the political class and their media whores are trying to say the worst's over, things go back to normal now, the truth is the real trouble has hardly even started yet. And the failure of the multicultural society is now so total that things can never go back to normal, at least until we have a serious, adult debate about what's gone wrong and how we can take it all into account as we rebuild the Britain that the political elite have broken so badly. Even last week they could have stopped it happening like this. The day after the police abandoned Tottenham to the first wave of black riots, I said publicly that such weakness would lead to trouble on an unimaginable scale unless the police got a grip immediately. But as we all know, they failed to do so, and London went up in flames as a direct result of this establishment cowardice, with so many other cities and towns following suit. Now, too late, the police are starting to get tough here and there. They can be when they want to be. Look at how they kettled large groups of young Englishmen in South London the other night when they came out to protect their community from the threat of an invasion by looters from inner London. Look at how, 3 or 4 days too late, the police in Manchester sorted out the mainly white crowd of rioting scum who were tearing Salford apart. Good for the police, but why did it take them so long? Because political correctness paralysed them, along with the entire political elite, because violent young blacks are some sort of sacred cow. Still, David Cameron and the police chiefs are now talking tough. After 3 or 4 days of saying that they wouldn't use plastic bullets and water cannons, they're now saying they will, at 24 hours notice. That'll help. Now, water cannons and baton rounds do have a role to play in restoring order. That's why they've been used so much against rioters in Northern Ireland for so many years. Being indigenous natives, you see, it's always been okay to use such force against them. They weren't sacred cows. Yes, they have their uses, which is why I was calling for baton rounds and water cannons to be deployed when Cameron was still away on a holiday. But water cannons especially only work against large crowds of essentially static demonstrators. They're no use against fast-moving hit-and-run gangs bringing chaos and mayhem to whole city boroughs. It's just typical Cameron spin, trying to make people think that something's now going to be done. Unfortunately, now that the initial pathetic police response has let the genie out of the bottle, the nearest we're going to see to a return to normal will involve a permanent new feature, low-level, smallish scale, but relentlessly recurrent outbursts of shopping with violence. Thanks to the useless Tories and the PC police, this new crime is here to stay. The far-left anarchists and the white trash lowlives who've joined in the riot in places like Salford and Liverpool will become regulars at such hit-and-run mayhem, as will the feral black youths who dominate so many inner-city areas. This collection of selfish vermin are going to make life really unpleasant for all decent people, unless we make crime really unpleasant for them. That's why we need a revolution in British policing and justice. Tougher, faster and more effective. The police need to have those baton rounds and they need to use them. The police need to have those plainclothes snatch squads and they need to use them quickly and ruthlessly. The courts need to be able to have offenders tried and jailed within hours, not after months on bail with taxpayer-funded human rights lawyers buzzing around them like flies round shit. Punishment needs to be revolutionised too. The cowardly low-life scum who ruin so many lives and businesses with their shopping with violence and violent anti-English and anti-Asian racism need to be handcuffed to lampposts and left there for 48 hours, in whatever the weather brings, to be ridiculed and humiliated by their victims and the decent folk of the local community. Then we'd see how tough the little bastards really aren't. The older offenders especially need to get automatic 5-year sentences for looting and rioting. Not in cushy and expensive to run holiday camps with PlayStations and pool tables that we pay for. They need to be put to work in electronic chain gangs, living in basic converted container lorries, making amends for what they've done with heavy, hard manual work, such as building sea defences and repairing the crumbling Victorian sewers under our cities. That's where these rats belong. Tough policing and tough criminal justice. That'd stamp the rioting out for good. If this isn't done, and fast, then the next wave of trouble will be much, much worse. Mark my words. Blacks against Muslims, Somalis against West Indians, Muslims against the English. The failed multicultural experiment is riven by these fault lines, along which so many different communities will fall apart in mutual loathing and violence on an apocalyptic scale. That's what Enoch Powell foresaw when he talked of the River Tiber, foaming with much blood. That is what is just around the corner in Tinderbox Britain. By the time you see this, by next week, by the end of this summer, within a couple of years, I don't know. But I'm warning everyone, especially the vision-free pygmies now running Britain into the ground, with their continued support for the immigration that's destroyed the hope of jobs for so many, their crazy foreign wars, their corrupt bank bailouts, and their get-tough posturing. I'm warning them that unless they get a real grip, this is the road to hell. If they do get really tough, they will buy us the breathing space we need for the serious adult debate that we have to have about the future of broken multicultural Britain. We need to start by telling the black underclass the truth instead of patronising them with vast wadges of taxpayers' money. Let's be honest and fair. When they complain they haven't got a future in Britain, they're absolutely right. That's why, quietly and without any fuss or expense to us, significant numbers of decent, especially Christian West Indians, are taking themselves and their young lads back to the stricter discipline and the stable society of their West Indian homelands. Let's stop being so cruel as to pretend that feral youths brought up on a diet of gangster rap, chip-on-shoulder indoctrination about slavery and an obsession with respect and guns are ever going to fit into our society. They won't. It's not our fault. It's not racism that holds them back. It's their own attitudes and the failure of Britain's socialist-wrecked education system, which has let all our kids down. Let's be honest. If the black community wants a place in modern Britain, they need to put their own house in order, starting with acknowledging their own failings instead of blaming the rest of us. I'm not being racist about this. My party has black members, several of whom serve this country in uniform. They're as good as any of us, but their community is desperately sick, and now it's infecting the rest of our society too. We also need a serious adult discussion about the problem of the creeping Islamisation of Britain. We need to face up to the fact that a religion that, in its increasingly powerful fundamentalist form especially, regards women as inferior beings and us unbelievers as subhumans, fit only for subjugation, is a real problem. We need to discuss seriously what we're going to do about having a rapidly growing part of our population believing with increasing fervour that a 1600-year-old book is more important as a guide as to how to run our society than the democracy for which generations of our bravest and best have fought and died. We need to think about what we're going to do about their involvement with drugs and grooming our young girls. We need to work out what to do about the growing influence in our society of a religion that regards freedom of speech as evil and which wants to cover up its and our women in black sacks. Once again, I warn Cameron and the other greedy and historically ignorant pygmies, this is an issue that will not go away. The longer they and the professional liars and the media try to sweep it all under the carpet, the worse things will be when we or our children have to face the final showdown between the Islamic way of doing things and our Western one. But it doesn't have to be like that. If we face up to these issues now, we can still rebuild broken Britain. We can stop not just the riots, we can also stop bailing out the banks in the EU and invest instead in rebuilding Britain's manufacturing base. With a return of real jobs and real pride, we can rebuild our communities and end the hopeless futility that tempts so many young black lads to mindless mayhem and young British lads to slow suicide by heroin. The story of this great country of ours doesn't have to end in the squalid breakdown of the insane multicult. There is a different path, an upward path. Listen to me, join me, and together we can make Britain better.